Hollis, you can do your intro dance, and we'll wait till we get a green light on the stream here. All right, we are going. This is Bad Publicity coming at you with a special Sunday edition with two other special guests joining us today. You can't have a special Sunday edition without special guests. I have Hollis. He's just as special. But we have Dan Clark and Katrina Ostrander. Ostrander. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right. So what's Hollis? Why don't you do some introductions here?
Absolutely, sure. Please, I would love it. I would love it actually because Daniel and Katrina, you guys are actually contributing very big to the Netrunner universe, and we really appreciate you guys being on the show today and really having a chance to talk with us. I know it took some time for us to lock you down. You guys are so busy, but I wanted you guys to please introduce yourselves and tell us, what your roles are at FFG and how you got involved with the Netrunner, please. I'll start with you, Daniel.
Sure. I believe my formal title these days is a senior game developer, and I am a long-time Fantasy Flight veteran, and I got involved with Android Netrunner by virtue of being involved with the Android board game those many years ago. So I mostly help out on the story and flavor side of things, but every now and again I'll contribute some game development.
And as far as game development goes, you said you're a longtime veteran. How long is a veteran status? Is that 5 years, 10 years?
I have 10 years in.
Wow.
I started in early 2005.
Do they give you the gold watch for that there? Is that how the company works?
They do let us get some a piece of portrait art snuck into one of our games at the 5-year mark, which is pretty cool.
So what's your card or your game that you're in?
I actually am not yet in anything. I spent too long dithering and trying to decide what to do with myself. That I missed the I missed the time when it was acceptable to do IDs. Which is why we have the Kevin Wilson ID in Wizard. Nice. It quickly became obvious that if we allowed everybody to make themselves IDs, then first of all our IDs would be a lot of white guys, and second of all that those ID characters recur and show up again and again. So. It's fine that Kevin Wilson, who created the Android setting, got to be an ID, but it would be less fine if everybody in the company did. So I'm sure I will be a Android piece of art at some point, and it will be hopefully mechanically relevant, so everybody will see it in their decks. But
I thought you were the Jack Wayland.
A friend of mine at FFG, John Ying, who is a pretty good artist, drew me up as Jack Wayland for my birthday this year and mocked up a card for me. So that's fun, but that's not official. That's not canonical.
Katrina, what about yourself?
I started as a RPG producer, and about a year after I'd been at the company, I switched over to the fiction editor role, and one of my first projects was the Worlds of Android. So they kind of threw me into the Android Netrunner LCG team to help learn the story by contributing to the different packs from like a flavor and a story perspective. So most of my contributions to the Android world come through the Mumbad cycle, a little bit in Data and Destiny, things like that. I've withdrawn a little bit now that I've gotten busier, but I still go through, I look at every piece of insert fiction that goes into the card packs, and I spent a lot of time compiling the worlds of Android into the product that it is today. So I'm excited to continue to work with the Android team from a lore and story perspective and make sure that everything is coordinated that way. But I do not do everyday development on the story as much anymore.
But I hear you. Are you underplaying your role a little bit there? Like we have, I don't know the exact date, but we had Lucas on back in the day, and we have a good rapport with him. When the camera stopped, that's when I said to him, I would love, do you have Dan's contact? I would love to get him on to dive deep into the world of Netrunner. And he said, no, you got to get Katrina. She holds the keys to the vault.
So yeah, I maintain our internal kind of database for the story, and I have read all the books and pretty much every piece of Android flavor or writing that has gone through the company at this point. So it is my job to be an expert on what exists, what is currently being developed, and I also get to contribute a bit to where we're going in the future. So I guess you could call me a lore keeper of some flavor.
Like any good editor, Kat is underselling herself here, trying to let her writers shine. Certainly.
Yeah, I just make sure that they're all going in the right direction and not stepping on each other's toes too much, and helping kind of mitigate conflicts.
So then, Dan, you have a long history in the worlds of Netrunner here, since you worked on the board game. But were you with Kevin then? Like half this world was yours? I thought the story was told is that it came up on a car ride, and you guys were just brainstorming this.
Yes. So Kevin had already planned that he wanted to do some kind of awesome noir cyberpunk board game extravaganza, and he recruited me to help him flesh it out and help beat it into shape. And we were on the FFG crew that went to Origins that year. I think it was 2007, but I would have to do research. So on the car ride down and on the car ride back, we spent that whole time figuring out who was our cast, figuring out what the world kind of looked like and what sorts of individual stories we were going to focus on. And we actually created a much larger cast than we finally saw in the final board game, because sanity prevailed and we went down to a much more manageable number of principal characters, folded some of their stories together. And I think that I don't know that either of us knew that we were creating something that was going to be as enduring and popular as it was. I think Kevin knew more than I did that this was going to be a thing over the long term. So we put a lot of thought and care into it, and indeed it has been a thing. It's got a big old setting book coming out. So
now, so what was your feelings when the board game was kind of a one and done shot? That game is so story intensive, and detailed in description, and it's right rich in a lot of theme by itself, and then it hit the shelf, and it people played it and enjoyed it and stuff like that. But it seemed like the amount of work that went into it was destined to go somewhere else. Were you guys very itching to get back in there and explore what that had to offer?
It was a labor of love, and I think that shows. We're very proud of it. It did very well for what it was, and I don't think that the fact that it hasn't received an expansion is in any way a condemnation. Not all board games require or receive expansions, but it was clear to me. I was fairly certain that we were going to return to it at some point, whether with a new game, with as it turned out, novels was what came next. Um, and I don't have any negative feelings about the board game or how it went. I am only happy with how well it was received and its legacy today.
Yeah, I just mean it had so much more room to explore. Like it seemed you guys put so much work into it, and then it had this
Good.
cult following, so to speak, like one of those, like a Blade Runner movie, right? And people have been hammering for a sequel or something else for a very long time.
Here's
And then
here's a
you,
little sausage making tip for you, which is if you can swing it, imply more than you say, and you'll create something that seems a much richer to the audience than it necessarily is inside your own head. My wife hates it when I do this. Well, I will reference something in a story I write that I don't know what it is. So I've just referenced it to throw it in there and see if people want to play with it. Yeah, we put a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of care into the Android board game, but I don't think we put an inordinate amount, and I don't think that and certainly none of that work was wasted. So that's the good news.
and then that spilled over into Infiltration, then, right? First,
First came the novels.
well, yeah, from the game perspective, you guys.
Yeah, and then from the game perspective, we published Infiltration a few years ago, which was a fun like caper heist game. So that was in Android. You were playing investigators and detectives, and then we flipped it over and you played the criminals in Infiltration. That was fun. And then Netrunner came along, and we got to sort of split it and approach it from two directions at once, which was again really fun.
So then, Katrina, was your homework when you came on board to read every one of these novels, study it in depthly, and just play the heck out of these games?
Yes, that was one of my first assignments when I started working as fiction editor. And after I got through all of it, the task was to begin to organize it in a coherent manner and make it so that other people did not have to read all of the novels in order to know, here's Mirror Morph, obscure like corporation has some ties to Hasbioroid, and who are these characters. Many of the little details from the novels actually made their way into the Worlds of Android setting book, so you'll get to explore the novels to a certain extent through that product as well.
If you were to take a look at, I guess, at the total amount of like content between like Infiltration and the Android and the Android universes, or I guess technically they're shared universes, how much of that content effectively makes it into Netrunner, and how much of it did you guys kind of have to scrap and say, all right, this really doesn't fit in the world we're trying to create?
I would say that because Netrunner is such a small focus, Netrunner explores the Android universe in just like a fringe way through the eyes of these super hackers and their exploits against the mega corporations. And of course, the megacorps are a tremendous thread, a story thread that goes through all the products. But for Netrunner, because most of the action, so to speak, takes place in cyberspace, that's a different kind of storytelling medium. And then you have, of course, the meat space connections and other things like that, where you do get to see hints of the rest of the world. But truly, Netrunner is, I think, a small slice of what the rest of the world of Android has to offer.
That's very cool.
I think to sort of model that, we could look at something like, look at Raymond Flint, right? In the Android board game, Raymond Flint is a main character, and a big chunk of the story is devoted to him and to his own personal issues and family and what have you. But in Netrunner, Ray Flint is just a connection. It's just a resource for the runner characters. And it isn't that Ray Flint is somehow like demoted. It's just that the game is approaching the subject matter from a different direction, so different things are important. The Netrunner slice of the Android universe focuses on only a subset of the whole setting. And it's a fun subset, and there's a lot that we can do with it. It's the good news. But so lots of story material that was generated for the other games, it is not that it got cut or got scrapped. It's just it's not relevant to the Netrunner experience.
Okay. So it's possible things that haven't made. It's possible things that were early on in Android and early on in Infiltration. They could very well make its way back into the Netrunner universe, even if it's just like a more or less a cameo card.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
So, how much does it pain you when you really want a character involved, or you'd love to explore a certain aspect, and you're like, can you just slide over to Lucas or, now Damon and be like, I really want you to put this character in because we have so much space and I've got this backstory in my head.
I think it's fair to say that we have more good ideas than we have space to publish them all. And of course, we have many more bad ideas than we have space to publish them all too. So there's an ethos that we carry around called murder your darlings. There we go. I can speak. The idea, don't get too attached to anything you've created or any character or any even piece of fiction or work that you've done, because much of it has to die to make room for new stuff.
Is that like a Game of Thrones approach?
It sounds like it.
I suppose it could be. And I'm not saying we're going to literally kill any characters. I just mean that we need to not get have too much ownership over individual aspects of the setting, because it's all collaborative. And fortunately, we work with a really great team. Damon and Lucas are both great. Zoe's great. All the humans who work at Fantasy Flight are awesome.
So can we dive into that a little more? Dan, you say you're not going to kill off characters, but there's IDs that come in the regular packs that will be cycled out, or would you guys possibly explore like something happening to these people when they get cycled out, like building a story on why that runner's not around anymore?
I mean, I don't want to get into what we have, what we're going to release in the future, but if a runner is rotating out, then they're exiting the story, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense to devote a lot of energy to that runner. Does that make sense?
Yep.
There's also the idea that we're not trying to tell an evolving, ever-changing story with our pack releases. The setting that you see in the Worlds of Android book is the setting, and outside of individual stories, I don't think you should expect to see it get radically changed. Like, we're not going to release a pack. We're like, oh, and then aliens invade, and change everything you knew forever. Like, well, that's not our model. So something like killing a character, we might do that in a story. We might do that in a narrow way like that, but I don't think the game is going to like have this timeline where like, oh, you can't use Andromeda anymore. She died in the last cycle. Like, we're not going to do that.
It sounds like a gamers movie. Like, wasn't that a recent gamers movie where that was like the concept of like their tournament?
I haven't seen Gamers 3, but...
So, Katrina, can you talk about, like, every Netrunner pack comes with this flavor pamphlet inserted in it. And I've played a couple of Fantasy Flight games with Star Wars, exploring into the new Game of Thrones stuff. But Netrunner seems to be the only one that you guys put these theme pamphlets in, and it's never the same. Like, it started out clips from the books, or little passages that would fit into the theme of the pack. But then it started to broaden out, and it was like public service announcements and bulletins and like top secret memos that were leaked from Jinteki Corp and stuff like that. How do these get decided, or why is it the only game to have this in it?
I'm not sure that it is the only game to have it in it. I'm pretty sure Warhammer 40K Conquest also has little ficklets, but as far as how they're developed, it's kind of a combination of what does the developer like, what about the pack is the developer really interested in exploring, what makes sense on a thematic perspective to like dig in and kind of portray some of the lore that we can't portray in the game medium. So it's pretty much whatever Damon and the rest of the LCG team kind of want to do for that insert, and of course then we beg and plead with our graphic designers to make it beautiful. But yeah, I think we like exploring the different media, whether we're doing it as an in-universe document or a piece of fiction, like the Lunar Cycle was. It's whatever seems cool and awesome, and I think something that enriches the pack is kind of how we look at it.
And is that all you? Is that
No, I am more of an editorial role. I have written some in the past. I've written some Sansan inserts, and I've done a little bit of work on some of the Mumbad cycle inserts, but for the most part, I go through, I work with them on their drafts, and then help them push it towards something awesome that also reflects the world in an accurate way. And as a fiction editor, I also work with them on their craft and their writing to make sure that they're showing, not telling, and portraying the narrative in the best possible way.
So
if you see the quality of these inserts go up dramatically, starting around Mumbad, that's because we have an editor now. It's pretty great.
Someone that's saying yes or no.
Yeah.
When we see some of the different art and characters appear on certain cards, would you also say yes or no to that? Like, does the design team have to come to you and say like, hey, we want this character or this, story location to appear in the background of a card? Is that okay? Can we do that? Can these two people interact together? Would you have final say there?
I feel like final say is too strong. It hasn't really come up very often where I'm dissuading people on an art brief's perspective. But I mean, I'm here as a resource for them to kind of talk about, oh, we really want to do this with these characters. How does that work? Because I've actually come to the Android world after Lucas and Damon, Dan, and Zoe were all involved. So it's been me learning how they want to portray the world. And so I'm very much, I feel like, part of a team in that regard, and less so a final arbiter of yes or no.
And Katrina, I mean, because you are editor also, earlier when we introduced you, you said that sometimes you have to sort of mitigate, I guess, handle when the writers have, I guess, a disagreement of like the direction. So, granted, I'm the nitpicky person. So is there an example of this, like where maybe there was an idea that was going one way and you had to kind of dial it back?
I wouldn't be able to talk about specific examples of when we did something or when we didn't do something, as opposed to when we did do something. But most of the time, it's more making sure that a character is kind of acting the way that they would, or that it's not stepping on something that's previously been established about them in the novels because they've forgotten or things like that.
So really, I guess when you guys bring, when you guys bring these characters to life, it's really critical that that character stays true to their written behavior. They wouldn't do something they normally wouldn't do.
I mean, there's always the chance for character growth and change, but I think the important thing is making sure that if there is a change, that it makes sense or that it's part of the story. So, you know, however way that Reina Roja, acts as she's portrayed in the Netrunner card game, we want to make sure that future cards don't have her doing something wildly different than being a freedom fighter or sticking it to Wayland, things like that.
Do you guys find it interesting which ones the fans gravitate towards?
I find it fascinating.
Is there one that sticks out for you?
I think that one thing I've noticed is that there is a large and a vocal majority that is interested in characters based on their mechanical abilities, right? And that's so characters like Andromeda get very, very popular because they are very powerful or useful in the game, and their strength or how compelling they are as characters seems to be riding along on the back of their mechanical effect, if that follows. So that I've learned to expect, to just like, oh, this character is very, very popular because this character is very powerful. Or the characters like the Professor that everybody kind of wants to make work. And everybody's got their, everybody talks about the Professor more than he shows up in tournaments, right? Because he's got this weird, quirky ability.
Yeah.
And then we have characters like Apex who are just so far outside of context that everybody's talking about Apex because he's like this puzzle both on a flavor and mechanical level, which I think is great, by the way. And I still haven't figured out what is the secret alchemy that makes people really latch on to characters on a flavor or art basis. I know that people love Chaos Theory, they love Dinosaurus, and I know that people seem to love Reyna also. And if I could tell you why, then I would basically only make hit characters from now on. Someday I'll figure it out. Until then, I'm just going to keep trying to make cool stuff and see what people latch onto.
Do you prefer when you mentioned characters that kind of send out sometimes because of power level? So a clear example to me, one of the biggest examples of this to me would be Jackson Howard. He's a card that's used in absolutely every single corporation deck, but in his insert, he's like a mid-level employee under Victoria Jenkins.
Sure, but I want to point out that because storytelling is the way it is, being a mid-level guy doesn't mean that you're less important in the context of the story. Jackson is compelling, I think, beyond just his mechanics. Look at that grin he's got. Look at how loud his suit is. He's got those toys all over his desk. He's, the director of youth programming, which is just interesting and a little bit sinister. At the same time, I'm perfectly happy with how popular Jackson Howard is, and I hope we get to see more of him someday.
We hope so too, but Damon also told us that nobody messes with Victoria Jenkins.
That's true. I certainly don't want to.
Katrina, do you have characters that you can't wait to see explored a little more, or favorites from the game?
Oh, that's really tough.
Oh, is that like picking between children? Which one's your favorite?
A little bit. I will say that Caprice Nisei was originally inspired by shoujo and romance manga in terms of her character arc and her powers and things like that. So she appeals to me pretty powerfully just because she's a psychic detective who's a clone, and I just find her super fascinating, and as a big Japanese culture fan, Jinteki for me just is super fun to play around with. So I feel like I could get excited or, talk up most of our characters. But off the top of my head, I like the idea of a clone struggling with her romantic feelings for a human while she works and is pretty much lorded over by Chairman Hero as to whether or not her sisters will be recycled or not. So that hits my joy matrix pretty well.
And that was, and some of her story was, sorry.
I didn't know you at the time, Katrina, but I was writing Caprice's flavor text in the Android board game just for you. At least for your demographic.
Yes.
So I'm pleased that worked.
So do you guys have any insights into what would get put into the novels and stuff then? Did those authors have to come and talk to you? Because I know she was fleshed out a little bit in, I think it was Strange Flesh, that story.
So I was not fiction editor when those novels came out, obviously, but I think it's pretty collaborative between the authors in terms of they pitch us what they want to do, and we kind of help guide them in the direction of what we think works for our brand and for our fans to make sure that, the author gets to write what they want and we get to see what we want come out of those novels. So, yeah, she's in Strange Flesh as a point of view character, and that was probably mostly on Matthew Farrer, the author. I think, Dan, you read through the drafts when it was coming through, is that correct?
Yeah, I liked it a lot, too. I was involved in those novels, although I wasn't the editor. We had a different fiction editor at the time, Patricia Meredith. And yeah, it was, the author comes with a pitch, we read the pitch, we either accept it, reject it, perhaps suggest some changes. So the fact that you saw Caprice in that novel, I think, had more to do with Matthew Farrer being interested in writing about her than it did with us sort of mandating that. That's also why most of those novels feature a number of original characters that did not start in the games, and that's, I think, good, because the requirements for game setting stuff and the requirements for just straight fiction are different. And when we can cross them over, that's great, but nothing is gained by trying to force that.
Yeah, and an author will do a much better job with characters that he or she is invested in and wants to develop and explore than if you just kind of hand down from on high, these are your characters and this is your plot, write it for us. You're not going to get the same kind of caliber of writing from the latter types.
Well, you guys have done great work with those novels, fleshing I don't know why I keep saying fleshing, or expanding the story of Netrunner, to those people that have picked up those books. I believe there's 5 of them, the 3 in a trilogy and 2 standalones.
Correct.
I do hope we see more. Maybe this the worlds of Netrunner is another jumping point. We'll see. I bet the sales for this will be bigger than expected, and hopefully that leads to more creative space opening up for you guys.
Let me tell you that if you think that the existing novels added flesh to the world of Android, then the Worlds of Android book is going to add flesh and fat and hair and feathers and all sorts of things.
So let's dive into that. Let's first off, the thing that stands out the most is you guys have pluralized worlds.
Yes,
yeah.
There are 3 of them.
There's Earth, Luna, and Heinlein, Earth, Luna, and Mars, rather, as the 3 worlds that we are including in that title. And we go to all 3 of them in the book and explore what it's like to live there, who lives there, what kinds of conflicts and stories are being waged or struggled with on each. So that's something from the Android board game. We allude to Martian refugees, and Deja Thoris is a Martian or working for the Martian Secret Service, and Raymond Flint and Chen Mai Dan and all sorts of other characters were burned in the battles of the Martian frontier as part of the war. So the three worlds have really been with the setting from the beginning, and now we finally get to highlight all three of them.
Notice how we were implying more than we were saying back then, with just a offhand mention of Martian refugees, and then the audience will conjure up everything else we need about the setting. It's great. It's a great technique.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be excited to see what you guys have in store for Mars in general, since a large part of this core gaming group hasn't seen that come through on the game yet.
No.
So how did it start? This book, did someone just, did you come in one day after a creative weekend and say, I've got a great idea?
I think this was something that we had wanted to do probably since the Android board game came out, to develop the setting more and to revisit it and to make it something that the fans really get to sink their teeth into. And so when I was hired as fiction editor, I was told that we were doing this book. So that was already in the works by the time I was brought onto the project and started finding writers for it and developing, an outline and things like that. But I think it's something that the fan base has probably been wanting for a while, just a setting guide to one of, a setting that they really enjoy.
Yeah, that matches my memory. Christian and Michael Hurley and Andrew Navarro drove this project, and we executed it. And by we, I mostly mean Kat and various freelance writers and artists, and Zoe as the art director. And the legion of graphic designers. Oh my God, so many people worked on this book.
Like 4 or 5 people on the graphic design team alone lended their talents to this book. It looks gorgeous. We should really applaud them for the amount of work and the love that they put into the design of it.
I've looked at of course some of the the Team Covenant has shown, of course, some of the pages they were able to show, as well as to the art that's on the FFG site when you look at the book. I mean, it is very, very beautiful. Similarly, a lot of the cards for the game itself are also very beautiful by a lot of great artists. I know I talked before the show. Matt Zeilinger is an artist credit. Are there a lot of artists that make art for the cards that we play on an everyday basis, also in the book, and lended their, I guess, their talents to creating the book as well?
I would say a solid percentage, possibly a majority of the artists who illustrated Worlds of Android are also our freelancers. Zoe would be able to give us more precise numbers, but
I know there's a gorgeous Liga piece in there. I know Matt did some stuff. And now I feel like I should know our artist.
Emilio Rodriguez.
Sure, yeah.
He's amazing. Oh, man. He's got some great stuff, too. Yeah.
And, of course, there's also, in addition to all of the new art, a lot of art from the card game is featured at glorious sizes that you've never seen them before, too. So
Nice.
I'm really excited for the art from the card game that we were able to include in this book as well.
Do you guys get to influence the, I guess, direction the game goes as far as the region? Because of course, if, we were on Earth, we were in New Angeles, and then then we dealt with the moon a bit. We're dealing with Moonbad now coming up. Do you guys have a lot of influence into, like, I guess, where the theme of the game is going based on that, or is it more or less the other way around? The card designers determine where they're going, and the material is written to support that.
That's mostly a development first approach there. They will sometimes ask us for input, but the LCG team and the leadership will pick what the focus for each individual cycle is, whether that's geographic or thematic or otherwise. Which, as it should be, because the game for it to be healthiest needs to chase the design, right? It needs to figure out what it needs to do mechanically, and from there we'll figure out what it should do story-wise.
Is that in regards to flavor text as well that sits on the cards? Katrina, do you have say in that stuff?
I have written my fair share of flavor text. Dan does the bulk of it, and of course, the LCG team does a lot of work on the flavor text too. And then we kind of pass it around and talk about it and kind of make sure that it's as awesome as we can get it. The flavor text is pretty collaborative, but that's one of the final steps. Once we know what the art is going to be, once we have the play-tested mechanics, that's definitely going to appear on the card.
I can only think of one card that was done flavor text first, and that was Interns.
Oh, really?
Everything else, flavor text is the last step, because we don't know how much space we have in the card until we have a final play-tested mechanic.
So then who is the evil genius that pretty much from the beginning has been dropping Guru down, and we haven't seen him yet, and now the internet boards are on fire with Princess Space Kitten?
I think both of those might be me. I might be the evil genius in question. Oh, hi, Eleanor. Would you like to also be involved in this? We have a special guest appearance from a not quite 2-year-old. So in the case of Guru, that was really just a kind of snarky handle that I thought seemed appropriate and then used a few times.
Oh.
I think Dan started talking about Guru, and Guru heard
Yeah.
and decided to shut that down immediately. He was like, "No, we're not gonna talk about it."
Anyway, sorry about that interruption.
Very, very thematic.
In terms of whether we're ever going to see Guru, that's speculation, right? But I don't think we need to. I think that if we see every character that is ever quoted on cards, it makes the world seem small.
Is that like your homage to like James Bond or Inspector Gadget? How Dr. Claw, all you saw was his claw. Like Guru, you'll just always see his name on text, and nobody will see what he looks like.
I don't know that he's a direct Dr. Claw reference. But, it's part of the whole imply more than you say technique. If we tell you everything there is to know about Guru, then it's not going to be as fun as dribbling out little snippets here and there and creating the legend around him or her.
It's all what Katrina allows to come through the vault at the time.
Katrina, there's a really big following for Princess Space Kitten. I just thought, if you weren't already aware, the internet really is on fire about Princess Space Kitten.
I'm pretty on fire about Princess Space Kitten too.
Nice.
But she has withheld her identity, even to me so far. We shall see what becomes of her, I suppose.
Cool.
Now I know you
Or
can't.
him.
Yeah, or him.
Oh no, please.
I know you can't talk about what's exactly in this, vault that Lucas has told us about before, but do you maintain this huge database of just thematic references, and like how deep does it go? Like, is this what everybody refers to? Is it like an actual like Wikipedia stuff, or?
Yeah, we use the software Wikipedia uses, so it's basically a giant internal wiki, and we flush it out with all the quotes and all the art that's been done of each of the characters, and that way, at a glance, if you need to see on which cards Princess Space Kitten has appeared, you can punch in Princess Space Kitten's name, find that out, get a sense of who Princess Space Kitten is, and that is pretty much. There's a lot of fan wikis out there for various settings, so I think you can safely assume that there's a similar level of detail in our own vaults.
The ice is thick in front of it.
Yes, it is.
I love that Princess Space Kitten is the one that catches, right? Like, I don't know. It's people have a strange sense of humor, myself included, of course.
Is there anything you guys can hint on about? Will we ever see the twins again? Is there more story being developed for those lovely Wayland twins?
I don't know about that, but I can tell you something that I don't know that anyone has noticed yet, which is
good.
That the twins. If you look at their art, you'll see that they have opposite and facing cybernetic arms and appendages, and it's because they were conjoined. They their arms facing one another are cybernetic because they didn't have flesh and blood arms there.
I have never noticed this. Not even kidding.
But there it is.
And now looking at it, I'm actually kind of wondering how I never noticed this ever. And it's very cool.
Massive spoiler right there. That's what that is.
Those are the inside tips that we crave.
Very cool.
It's funny because the Netrunner fan base is the Android fan base in general, but it's the Netrunner fan base in particular is the best fan base I've ever had the pleasure to interact with. And you guys noticed everything.
You guys
so
are
I'm
freaking
shocked.
sleuths.
Yeah, I'm shocked that nobody has picked this up about the twins before. But like the Apex flavor text, that we thought we were being so clever with the Apex flavor text that people cracked inside 12 hours of it being revealed. It was amazing.
It's fun to write for you guys. Let me just say that. You make us up our game.
Yeah.
Katrina, so coming back into this, or getting involved in this cyberpunk themed and stuff like that, how research intensive outside of, just checking lore and the wiki stuff is it for you guys to make sure that, certain flavor does appear from like a computer perspective? Like, do you have a computer background or some basic computer knowledge that you have to keep up with?
I've been doing web design, and I got into programming a little bit in college, so I have very, very scant amount, but there are other people in the office who have much more interesting educational backgrounds or work histories, so we reach out to them as resources. If we know people outside of work, we'll approach them and ask them questions.
Sure.
Of course, the news are news is a tremendous source of inspiration, and it's been a uphill battle to stay ahead of what technology is currently capable of to make Netrunner still feel futuristic. Water was recently confirmed. Liquid water was recently confirmed on Mars.
Yep.
That's a huge piece of information that I think still works with the way that we've portrayed Mars, so that's pretty great. But there's so much inspiration that you can just draw from the NASA website and what everyone else, there's a ton of tech blogs out there that you can read more about. The keys that are held to the internet and the secret meeting that either I can or...
I love that article.
Oh my god, that's frightening. To make sure that the domain name service never goes down. So I think what's interesting is how when Neuromancer was written, it was able to be so cool and realistic because the author didn't know how computers worked and came at it with his full imagination intact. So there's definitely a level of that where sometimes you don't want to base yourself too much in reality. Sometimes you just want to imagine, and reverse engineer the technology to make it how you think it would be coolest or have the best stories told around it.
Right. I mean, I'm just very impressed when there is that similarity and you guys draw those lines. Because, I mean, this is what I do for a living. I'm the corporate security guy, keeping the
Nice.
the hackers out. So when the flavor text of like auto scripters or interfaces, and especially when DDoS became a card, I was like, oh my god, this like I thought this would have been something we would have seen a long ago. But then when you guys drop something like that in, that's like an actual real world attack on servers. I just got to take my hats off to you guys at that time.
We actually had a guy teach us how to do SQL injection the other day.
Oh my god, that was
So-
scary. Made me afraid for my websites.
Um, and of course, SQL injection, maybe it would be a funny reference to have that like still work on a website somewhere in the far future. But more the whole like idea about the internet not being designed for security because it was designed by almost by chance, right? Like
Right.
just
By hobbyists.
yeah, and that sort of philosophy, I think, even if the specifics of the attacks that we use today aren't necessarily going to be relevant in the Android future, the philosophy behind them and the whole idea of the never-ending war between having to allow access and having wanting to deny access, that's all relevant. That all applies. And people who don't patch their software also, the human element being a major security flaw, I think that definitely applies. Myself, I have virtually no computer knowledge. I have a dumb phone.
It's scary.
I have one semester of C++, and just enough to get myself in trouble.
What does your phone have a rotary?
Oh man.
I almost wish it did. My pet peeve is ringtones that don't sound like a ring. Like I have to every time I get a new phone, I have to dig around in it trying to find a actual ring. I'm very old.
So you don't like if you don't want your favorite song as a ringtone?
Because then I'm not going to pick up the phone. We were too busy, out.
So from the book actually, what for you guys? What do you think? What would you say was one of the I guess I don't know. What was I guess the word I'm looking for is the hardest. What was the hardest part about getting this information and delivering it to us? I mean, was it so much content that you felt overwhelmed? Was it at times was there not enough? How'd that work out?
For me, the hardest part was trying to both deliver information and make it actually fun to read.
So instead of just
if anybody knows how to do that perfectly, then they're probably making a lot more money than me somewhere else.
what about you, Katrina?
Oh, this is hard.
Is the hardest part answering questions
Yeah.
about what the hardest part is?
Yeah, maybe. There was definitely, I went back and forth with the writers and I really pushed them to give it their all, and they definitely stepped up their game and gave us material that I think is really engaging and evocative. But one of the things that I had to be mindful of and to make sure that we were doing was to inject little references here and there that we never explored, just so that even as we're like deep diving into this universe, there's still even more on the horizon that can be explored in the future. So making sure that we had plenty of ground that we still hadn't covered, that we were same time like satisfying and not satisfying your need for all the information. But I think the Worlds of Android is an incredible starting point, and I'm really excited to continue to develop the setting and all the aspects that we don't explain 100%. in this book.
Yeah, we were really hoping, looking closely at the cover, for anywhere where it just says Volume 1, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That would. I mean, it's volume one in the sense that everything that's been published before and everything that's published after is all additional material, right? It's not like this. Well, it's everything you need to know to really grok the setting, but it's not everything that you could know, because that wouldn't fit into 272 pages. That's
Yeah.
Would a guidebook to Earth that we live in today fit into
The Hitchhiker's
272
Guide to the
pages?
Galaxy here?
How
No,
many
and-
pages does
And
Wikipedia have?
this setting has 3 worlds,
Shoot.
so
Oh my gosh. Katrina, did you just compare all of Netrunner to how large Wikipedia is?
No, I was continuing Dan's metaphor about,
Oh.
if you wanted to get really, really, like, crazy with how much you define about a setting, and make it super realistic, then you're going to start getting really detailed and a lot of material, more than can be fit in a 272-page hardback.
So did you ever have to play traffic cop at some times? Like, was there a lot of artists or people that do the material for you really, really fighting over, like, the same piece? Like, oh, I want to talk about this character. No, I want that character.
Oh, I don't think that there was much fighting. I mean, the authors all knew what everyone's assignments were, and I had initially requested, hey, what are you most excited for? What would you like to write about, with the authors? And there was a surprising amount of diversity in people's likes and dislikes, and what they wanted to really develop as part of their writing. So it was not a traffic cop, so much as just kind of making sure everything was running smoothly already.
So
we also got lucky with our writers in that many of them have quite extensive expertise in relevant fields. We had a pastor, we have physicists, we have biochemists.
Yeah.
Like when you have a
John Nuts,
biochemist
military
who,
nuts.
yeah, when you have a biochemist who wants to write about Jinteki, you let him.
no doubt.
So I have a sort of flavorful maybe question. I mean, it's definitely flavorful. So this book, I'm super excited. That's the first thing.
Good.
Good.
I'm being honest, I avoid reading at all costs, and I could not be more excited to have this arrive to my door and just read it cover to cover. Because I really do love the universe that much. For you guys, what's your favorite corporation that that we're aware of, and what's your favorite, I'm gonna say, runner faction?
Oh boy. I think my favorite corporation is probably the Whaling Consortium. I love that the whole, like, bright promise corrupted and perverted by profit. It's this terrifying hybrid of good intentions and really not, that I think is very, very compelling. And my favorite runner I go back and forth between whether I'm a shaper or an anarch, mostly having to do with how angry I am at, current political nonsense, or whether I want to smash everything or get my rocket ship and go build a new, better world somewhere else. Those are my 2 modes that I alternate back and forth between.
For me, for aforementioned reasons, Jinteki is probably my favorite. Corporate daimyo and Ronin and the whole aesthetic just really appeals to me. And as far as factions go, probably Anarch also. I don't play the game all that often. But when I do, I like maximum punk rock. I like just destroying things, shredding things,
I
and
love Max.
yes.
So are we in for a real treat to see the Jinteki in Moombad with that Asian flavor? Like, is it going to be like Jinteki in a whole different direction?
I think Jinteki kind of morphs and shifts like any good mega corporation to suit the particular customers in a region, and so I think you'll see Jinteki adapting to serve an Indian culture, basically, and some of the executives have a very distinctly Indian vibe to them, despite belonging in the Jinteki faction.
The one more follow-up question for the book. Did you guys have writer room sessions? Dan, you mentioned that those writers seem a very eclectic group. Do you have to get them all together and make sure everyone's on the same page because you are building towards one final book? Or
when we have our writers live all over the place, so when we have the opportunity to meet in the same room with our writers, we take it because it can be very productive. We met John Crowdis for lunch in Minneapolis when we happened to be in town for unrelated reasons. That was great. But we have never just sat all of our writers down together in one room because the geography forbids it.
I think the closest we get is at Gen Con, and then we all go out and get dinner, whoever can make it, but that's because I borrow pretty heavily from the RPG team's stock of writers. But as far as keeping them coordinated and getting them to work together, the internet is so useful now, just in terms of setting up mailing lists and setting up, project pages and things like that. You can do a lot when you give people central information and give them like an opportunity to talk with one another, and they did. They coordinated amongst themselves to. There are several fiction pieces within the worlds of Android, and I will leave it to you to see how they connect.
Ooh.
But that required definitely some collaboration on the part of the writers, even beyond what I was doing. So kudos to them. They did a great job. They really knocked it out of the park.
So favorite part of this book from each one of you two? Like, I get it. I open the box. Where should I turn to first?
Oof. I think that the introduction is pretty mind-blowing because that's where you have the highest concentration of full spread art. You get an overview of like the greatest hits of the Android setting, and the art is just fantastic to behold. So I would say take the book, flip through it, and look at all the beautiful, beautiful pieces of art, and then kind of let that guide you for where you want to explore next.
Dan, do you have a piece that stands out for you?
I was just thinking about the sort of day in the life vignette for the NAPD.
Oh God.
It's been in my mind lately. Just, recent events here in the United States have policing on my mind, and it's interesting how much Android is and isn't a dystopia, right? It's for a lot of people, it's a very pleasant place and time to live, and for a lot of other people, it isn't. And so, in some ways, my argument is that Android is not that much more a dystopia than what we live in today, and that's also, I think, the power of science fiction, in that we get to. We can imagine all sorts of fun and exciting and different new worlds, but also we can hold the mirror up to the world we're living in now and sometimes it really needs it.
And that's pretty true. There's a lot of connections between, various writing pieces in here that we can draw to the current state of the world we are in.
The more things change, the more things don't.
Yeah.
Katrina, you said the word spread when you said about the introduction. Does that mean we can expect full pullouts or?
So when I say spread, I'm referring to the facing pages that when you have the book open, you have the left page and the right page. They comprise a spread.
Okay.
But we do also have 2 gatefolds that are 4 pages wide, essentially.
Ooh.
And
They're
yes, we have cross-sectional views of a lunar colony underground. I don't think that we've spoiled the other gatefold too much just yet, but they're pretty fantastic for getting a really great sense of what an average place, like what all it contains, what are all the different moving parts. The artist really did a great job researching to make sure that everything was real, or could be real, felt real, and we got to include her text on those pages.
So were you guys as blown away getting this finished product as you were making it? Did it pass all expectations?
Seeing the sample that we got in of this book and seeing it come to life is incredible. It's so colorful and beautiful, and just seeing it not on a screen as I've been living with it for many months.
It's now tactile, right? You can hold it.
It's definitely a thing of pride, and hopefully I've earned the white hairs that it gave me.
I pet it whenever it goes by. Whenever Simone or whoever is carrying it around, I just reach out and touch it, just to know.
Coming soon to an FLGS near you.
No doubt.
Wait.
Yeah.
For all those people that have not pre-ordered it already with the extra goodies.
Yeah.
It is too late for the extra goodies. That ended on December 1st, but I'm checking
And
now.
thank God, my wrist is going to, yeah.
Pretty sure you can still order it from our web store if you just want the regular edition. Yes, you can still pre-order it through our web store, or you can go to any game store that carries our products, and I believe most bookstores would be able to get a hold of it for you too.
Yeah, go to a bookstore, ask them for it. Get them to call up our sales department.
And you know what, guys, and anyone listening or watching, make sure you do, because this thing is going to be a thing of beauty, and just supporting the love for this game it drives the next one, right? Like if this one does really well, I'm sure you guys can start working on the next one.
The best way to ensure that we get to keep making Android products is to keep buying Android products. Mm-hmm. It's the short word.
Katrina and Dan, I can't thank you guys enough for taking time out of your weekend here off the clock hours. Like I said to Damon, I hope you can go in an hour and a half later tomorrow.
I wish.
Yeah, I think we're too busy for that, but no, it's great to come out and talk to you guys. You guys do a great job with these podcasts, and of course we really appreciate the fan base who allow us to do this for a living. Without you guys, we would be doing something else with our lives. So thank you everyone who is picking up this book and who enjoys the Android setting.
Well, I think
for having us on.
In no game is it more apparent that theme makes it what it is than what you guys put into this. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
You guys rock.
Thanks for playing.
Yes.
Perfect. Really appreciate everyone that took time out on a Sunday, and thanks again, and catch us next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.